In just the past year, nearly 800,000 Americans abandoned large urban counties, double the outmigration rate before the pandemic. In cities from San Francisco to Chicago, the scale of the escape is impossible to ignore. Across the nation, millions have already uprooted their lives since 2020, leaving behind empty offices, shuttered storefronts, and neighborhoods stripped of their middle class. Each moving van is a warning sign. Rising crime, unaffordable housing, failing schools, and collapsing infrastructure are driving families to the edge. In this video, we uncover 10 US cities where Americans aren't simply moving out, they're desperate to escape. Because for many, staying is no longer an option. In just the past year, nearly 800,000 Americans abandoned large urban counties, double the pace before the pandemic. San Francisco is at the center of this unraveling. Once the crown jewel of the West Coast, a symbol of freedom and innovation, it is now a place families are desperate to escape. Since 2020, more than 65,000 residents have left San Francisco County, while the broader Bay Area has lost nearly 250,000 people. This isn't a shift, it is an exodus. What remains is a city hollowed out, where prosperity once thrived, but now feels like it is slipping away. Affordability is the first breaking point. The median home price here sits around $1.2 million, nearly triple the US average. Renters face median monthly payments close to $3,000. Even six-figure tech salaries no longer provide stability. And for middle-class families, homeownership is an impossible dream. Safety compounds the crisis. Property crimes remain among the nation's highest, and burglaries have plagued neighborhoods once considered safe. Downtown corridors that were filled with life are now lined with shuttered stores and for lease signs. Businesses cannot endure the theft, vandalism, and instability that define daily life. Homelessness casts another long shadow. More than 7,000 people live on the streets, one of the highest per capita rates in America. Tent encampments sprawl across sidewalks, often just steps from multi-million-dollar condos. The contrast is staggering, and for many residents, it is no longer something they can ignore, it is something they can no longer live with. Even the city's famed tech sector, once its economic engine, is pulling back. Companies have downsized their footprints. Workers are relocating to other hubs, and remote work has drained vitality from downtown. The effect is empty office towers, shrinking tax revenues, and a city government struggling to keep up. For those who remain, the decline is visible in daily life. Potholes scar the streets, public transit faces steep budget cuts, schools are losing enrollment year after year, forcing closures and consolidations. Each of these cracks in the foundation is another reminder that San Francisco is unraveling faster than its leaders can repair it. And so the moving vans keep coming. Families with children, young professionals once drawn to opportunity, even retirees who thought they'd found paradise. They are all leaving. The city by the bay may still look stunning from a distance, with its hills, bridges, and fog rolling across the skyline. But beauty no longer outweighs fear. For thousands, escape is no longer about choice or lifestyle. It is about survival before the collapse swallows the city whole. Chicago was once America's beating industrial heart. Railroads, stockyards, steel, and a middle class that defined the American dream. But in 2025, the city is collapsing under the weight of decline it can no longer outrun. The population has been shrinking for more than a decade. Since 2020, Chicago has lost tens of thousands of residents, with Illinois as a whole experiencing one of the steepest outmigration rates in the nation. Families aren't just moving to the suburbs, they are leaving the state entirely, chasing safer streets and lower taxes elsewhere. Crime remains one of the city's deepest scars. In 2022 alone, Chicago recorded over 700 homicides, among the highest totals in the nation. Entire neighborhoods live under the constant echo of gunfire, and for parents raising children, the cost of staying is measured not just in dollars, but in safety. Businesses feel it too. Shops close earlier, and investment dries up in communities where violence feels routine. But crime is only one part of the collapse. Chicago is drowning in debt. Its pension obligations are among the worst of any major US city, with unfunded liabilities climbing into the tens of billions. That burden forces higher property taxes year after year, squeezing homeowners and small businesses already struggling to survive. Residents pay more but see less in return. As potholes deepen, schools close, and transit systems falter. Downtown tells its own story. Once the pride of the Midwest, the Loop is scarred by vacant office towers and dwindling foot traffic. Remote work hollowed out demand, while rising crime pushed shoppers and tourists away. Where bustling sidewalks once symbolized Chicago's strength, silence now lingers. The exodus is undeniable. Moving vans line streets in neighborhoods across the south and west sides, as families pack up and head south or west in search of opportunity. For many, the promise of Chicago, its culture, its skyline, its history, is no longer enough to outweigh the cost of living in fear and debt. Chicago is still beautiful from afar. The shimmering lakefront, the iconic skyline, the energy of a city that once defined the Midwest dream. But behind the beauty lies a crisis accelerating faster than leaders can stop it. For those who have left, the decision was painful. For those still here, the choice grows clearer every day. Leave now or stay and risk sinking with a city in collapse. New Orleans has lost more than 26,000 residents since 2020, an 8.3% decline that continues to hollow out the city. What was once a vibrant cultural capital is now a place where thousands of families see no future and are desperate to escape. The decline didn't begin yesterday. Nearly 2 decades after Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans still hasn't fully recovered. Its population never returned to pre-storm levels, and every year, more residents leave as new threats rise. Sinking land, stronger hurricanes, and rising seas mean the city lives on borrowed time. Scientists warn that without massive investment, large parts of New Orleans could become uninhabitable within a generation. Even the levees, pumps, and flood walls built after Katrina aren't invincible. Billions were spent to rebuild, but experts caution another storm on the scale of Ida could overwhelm the system. For families living below sea level, every hurricane season feels like a roll of the dice. The financial collapse adds another layer. A crippling insurance crisis has made staying unaffordable. In the past 2 years, major insurers have pulled out of Louisiana, refusing to cover homes in the state's most vulnerable areas. For those who can still find coverage, premiums have doubled or tripled. For many families, the choice to leave isn't about preference, it's about survival. Meanwhile, crime continues to erode stability. Though murder totals have recently declined, New Orleans still ranks among the most violent cities in America. Parents weigh every decision against risk. Whether to let their kids play outside, whether to go out after dark, whether the danger is worth staying another year. The economy is fragile too. Tourism remains the lifeblood of New Orleans, but rising crime and instability keep many visitors away. Empty storefronts in the French Quarter, earlier business closures, and reduced foot traffic signal a city losing its rhythm. Infrastructure and education echo the collapse. Potholes, broken streetlights, and unreliable public services define daily life. Schools struggle with low test scores and dwindling enrollment. For many families, the question isn't whether to leave, it's how soon they can manage it. So the exodus continues. Moving vans head north toward Baton Rouge or west to Houston. Each departure takes more tax revenue, more culture, more stability from a city already stretched thin. From a distance, New Orleans still dazzles. Jazz echoing through the French Quarter, Mardi Gras parades, and second lines winding through the streets. But for those who live here, beauty no longer outweighs fear. In 2025, survival in New Orleans often means leaving it behind. Cleveland has lost more than 60% of its population since 1950, a staggering collapse that has left entire neighborhoods hollowed out. In 2025, the city is still shrinking, still fighting to stop the bleeding, and for many residents, leaving has become the only option. Once a powerhouse of steel and manufacturing, Cleveland was home to nearly 1 million people in the mid-20th century. Today, fewer than 370,000 remain. The factories are gone, the jobs vanished, and the communities that depended on them were left behind to crumble. The scars are visible everywhere. Blocks of vacant homes, collapsing warehouses, and streets that feel more abandoned than alive. Poverty weighs heavily on the city. Nearly 30% of Cleveland residents live below the poverty line, one of the highest rates of any major U.S. city. For children, the numbers are even worse, with more than 40% growing up in poverty. Schools reflect this despair. Chronic underfunding and low test scores keep families locked in cycles they cannot break if they stay. Crime remains a constant fear. Cleveland's violent crime rate is nearly 3 times the national average. Entire neighborhoods live with the sound of sirens and the reality of danger after dark. For families who want safety and opportunity, the decision to pack up and move is less about choice and more about survival. Infrastructure, is another wound. Roads filled with potholes, bridges in disrepair, and an aging water system make daily life a constant frustration. The city's economic base is too small to fund meaningful improvements, and each year, the gap between need and resources only widens. The result is an exodus that never really stopped. Each year, more Clevelanders head south or west, joining the millions of Rust Belt migrants chasing jobs and security in other states. The houses they leave behind often sit empty, falling victim to arson or decay, adding to the sense of abandonment. Yet from a distance, Cleveland still shows flashes of beauty. The lakefront, the cultural institutions, the resilience of those who remain. But the truth is unavoidable. The city has been shrinking for decades, and in 2025, that collapse shows no signs of slowing. For families weighing their future, staying in Cleveland means living with crime, poverty, and decay. Leaving means survival, and more, survival is winning. Birmingham has a poverty rate of more than 22%, nearly double the US average, making it one of the poorest large cities in America. For thousands of families here, the collapse isn't just visible, it's lived every single day. Once known as the Magic City for its rapid growth during the steel boom, Birmingham has spent decades in decline. Its population has fallen to around 196,000, less than half its peak. What was once a thriving industrial hub is now a city fighting to keep pace with a changing economy it never fully caught up to. Poverty fuels the collapse. Nearly 1 in 4 residents lives below the poverty line, and child poverty rates climb even higher. Entire neighborhoods are locked in generational cycles of struggle, schools are underfunded, and opportunities are scarce, pushing younger families to move elsewhere in search of stability. Healthcare is another breaking point. Alabama consistently ranks among the lowest in the nation for health outcomes, and Birmingham mirrors those statistics. High rates of obesity, diabetes, and limited access to affordable care make the city one of the least healthy urban centers in America. For many residents, survival means leaving behind not just poverty but illness and neglect. Crime compounds the crisis. Birmingham has one of the highest violent crime rates in the country, ranking near the top among U.S. cities year after year. Entire neighborhoods live under the weight of shootings and assaults, eroding any sense of security. For families with children, the risk often outweighs the hope of staying. Infrastructure tells its own story. Roads pocked with potholes, aging bridges, and abandoned industrial sites dot the city. Investments flow unevenly, leaving wealthier suburbs with resources while Birmingham itself struggles with decay. Public transit is limited, isolating communities and cutting them off from opportunities in surrounding areas. The exodus continues quietly but steadily. Many leave for Atlanta, Nashville, or further afield, chasing jobs, safety, and education that Birmingham cannot provide. Each family that leaves takes with them tax revenue, talent, and stability, losses that deepen the city's downward spiral. From the outside, Birmingham still holds on to pieces of its identity: the skyline, the steel history, the cultural legacy of the civil rights movement. But for those living here, the cracks are impossible to ignore. Poverty, crime, poor health, and failing infrastructure converge into one reality: a city unraveling. For many in 2025, the choice is painful but clear. To stay is to endure hardship and risk. To leave is to hope for survival elsewhere. And in Birmingham, survival is becoming the only option. Oakland's violent crime rate is more than double the national average. And in 2025, the city is unraveling under the weight of crime, cost, and collapse. For thousands of families, leaving Oakland has become less of a choice and more of a necessity. The exodus is undeniable. In just the past 3 years, Oakland and the surrounding Bay Area have lost tens of thousands of residents. Families are leaving for safer, more affordable cities across California and the nation. Census data confirms what empty streets already show. Oakland is shrinking. Crime is the first breaking point. Carjackings, robberies, and shootings have surged in neighborhoods across the city. Headlines of brazen daytime thefts and assaults drive home a sense that safety has eroded. For businesses, the impact has been devastating. Shops once central to downtown commerce have shuttered, leaving behind empty storefronts and streets stripped of vitality. Affordability adds another weight. The median home price in Oakland still sits above $750,000, far beyond reach for most working families. Renters face monthly payments near $2,800. Incomes cannot keep pace, and middle-class residents are forced out, either to distant suburbs or out of state entirely. The result is a hollowing out of the very communities that once gave Oakland its energy. Public services show the strain. Schools are struggling with declining enrollment as families relocate. Public transit faces financial shortfalls, cutting service even as residents depend on it. Infrastructure struggles too. Pothole-filled roads, broken streetlights, and deteriorating public spaces remind residents daily of a city stretched too thin. Even Oakland's reputation as a hub of culture and resilience has been tested. Sports teams have abandoned the city. The Raiders, the Warriors, and now even the Athletics planning their departure. Each loss is more than symbolic. It drains revenue, jobs, and civic pride, leaving residents with the sense that Oakland's future is slipping away. And so, the moving vans continue to roll out. Families pack up not because they want to abandon their city, but because Oakland no longer feels like it can sustain them. Safety, affordability, and opportunity, the three pillars of urban life, have crumbled. From a distance, Oakland's hills, its waterfront, and its view of the bay still look beautiful. But for those living inside its neighborhoods, beauty doesn't outweigh fear. In 2025, escape from Oakland is no longer about seeking a better life. It's about survival before the city's collapse becomes irreversible. Baltimore's homicide rate remains among the highest in the nation, more than 40 homicides per 100,000 residents. In 2025, the city's struggle with violence, corruption, and decay is driving thousands of families to leave behind the place they once called home. For decades, Baltimore has been trapped in a cycle of decline. Once a thriving industrial and port powerhouse, the city has steadily lost both jobs and residents. From a peak of nearly 950,000 people in the mid-20th century, Baltimore's population has fallen to under 570,000, a staggering loss that has hollowed out entire neighborhoods. Crime defines much of the city's reputation. Beyond the high homicide rate, carjackings, assaults, and robberies plague daily life. For families raising children, safety has become a luxury many cannot count on. Streets in once vibrant communities feel abandoned after dark, and businesses struggle to survive in an environment where fear is constant. Corruption and mismanagement deepen the crisis. Baltimore has faced scandal after scandal in city leadership, eroding public trust and leaving residents doubtful that change will ever come from within. The failures of leadership show up everywhere, in the schools, the streets, and the city's finances. Education is one of Baltimore's greatest wounds. Public schools suffer from chronic underfunding, low test scores, and infrastructure so poor that some buildings struggle to provide heat in winter. Families with the means often flee to surrounding counties, leaving behind schools with even fewer resources and children with dwindling opportunities. Economically, Baltimore's collapse is tied to the decline of its port and industry. Once an engine of middle-class jobs, automation and global shifts have cut opportunities, leaving poverty entrenched. Today, nearly 1 in 5 residents lives below the poverty line, and the gap between rich and poor only grows wider. The exodus is steady. Moving vans head for suburbs, for Washington, D.C., for safer and more prosperous cities across the mid-Atlantic. Each departure takes more stability, more tax revenue, more hope from a city already fighting to hold on. From the outside, Baltimore's harbor still looks beautiful. Its row houses colorful, its cultural history rich. But inside the neighborhoods that have endured decades of crime, poverty, and mismanagement, beauty doesn't erase fear. For many families in 2025, survival means leaving Baltimore before the weight of collapse drags them down too. St. Louis has lost more than 65% of its population since 1950, one of the steepest declines of any American city. In 2025, the exodus continues, leaving behind empty neighborhoods, struggling schools, and a downtown that feels more abandoned each year. At its peak, St. Louis was home to over 850,000 people. Today, fewer than 300,000 remain. Entire blocks of once thriving neighborhoods now stand dotted with vacant lots, boarded-up homes, and silence. The shrinking population has hollowed out the tax base, leaving fewer resources to fund schools, police, or basic infrastructure. Crime has become an inescapable reality. St. Louis consistently records one of the highest violent crime rates in the United States. For families raising children, the danger feels unrelenting. Gun violence haunts neighborhoods, and many residents no longer believe their streets can be made safe. Businesses feel the toll too, shops close earlier, and investment dries up in areas where security cannot be guaranteed. Education is another casualty. public schools face chronic underfunding and some of the lowest performance scores in the state. Enrollment has fallen year after year as families move to surrounding counties or out of Missouri altogether. For parents, the question isn't whether schools are failing, it's whether their children will have a chance if they stay. The city's downtown tells its own story of decline. Once a hub of business and entertainment, large portions now sit half-empty. Office towers with darkened windows, storefronts with for lease signs, and streets with little foot traffic reflect a city center that has lost its vibrancy. Even iconic landmarks, like the Gateway Arch, stand in contrast to the decay surrounding them. Infrastructure mirrors the collapse. Potholes scar the roads, and aging bridges strain under years of neglect. With fewer residents and shrinking revenues, the ability to repair and modernize the city has all but vanished. The problems mount faster than leaders can respond. And so the moving vans keep coming. Families head to the suburbs, to Texas, to the South, anywhere they feel safer, more stable, and more hopeful than in St. Louis. Each departure takes more stability, more tax dollars, and more hope from a city already in freefall. From afar, St. Louis still looks iconic, its arch rising proudly over the river. But up close, the cracks are undeniable. For thousands of families in 2025, staying in St. Louis is no longer about loyalty or history. It is about survival, and survival means leaving. Portland has seen its downtown office vacancy rate climb above 30% in 2025, one of the highest in the country. The empty towers and hollowed-out streets are a stark symbol of a city many residents are desperate to escape. Once celebrated as one of America's most livable cities, Portland's reputation has crumbled in less than a decade. The city became a magnet for tech workers, creatives, and young families in the early 2000s. But since the pandemic, thousands have left, driven out by crime, homelessness, and a collapsing sense of order. Crime is the most visible fracture. Violent incidents and property crimes have surged, leaving neighborhoods uneasy and downtown unsafe after dark. For many small businesses, the tipping point has already arrived. Shops shutter their doors, not just from theft, but from dwindling customers who no longer feel safe coming downtown. Drugs and homelessness compound the collapse. The fentanyl crisis has hit Portland with devastating force. Sidewalks in parts of downtown are lined with tents, and open-air drug use has become a grim reality. Residents describe entire blocks where the sense of safety is gone, replaced by fear and resignation. The humanitarian toll is tragic, but for families with children, the decision to leave often feels like the only path forward. The economy reflects this hollowing out. With more than 30% of downtown offices sitting empty, tax revenues are falling, straining public services that were already stretched thin. Transit systems face budget shortfalls, schools face enrollment declines, and infrastructure projects are delayed. Each empty tower is more than a vacancy. It's a symbol of lost jobs, lost vitality, and lost confidence in the city's future. The exodus is visible in the numbers. Oregon has recorded net population losses in recent years, and Portland is at the center of that decline. Moving vans head toward Arizona, Texas, and Idaho as residents trade livability for affordability and safety. And yet, Portland's natural beauty remains undeniable. The forests, the rivers, and the mountains still frame the city in breathtaking views. But beauty alone cannot outweigh fear, addiction, and abandonment. For thousands in 2025, Portland is no longer the city they once believed in. It has become a place to escape, not to dream. Jackson's water system failed so badly in 2022 that nearly 150,000 residents went days without safe drinking water. In 2025, the city still struggles to keep taps running, a symbol of how far the collapse has already gone. Mississippi's capital once represented Southern progress, but today it is a cautionary tale of what happens when infrastructure, governance, and economic vitality break down at the same time. Families who can leave are leaving, and those who remain live with the consequences of neglect. The water crisis is only the most visible wound. Jackson's infrastructure is failing across the board. Pothole-filled streets, aging sewer systems, and frequent boil water notices have turned daily life into survival. Residents have little confidence that their city can provide even the most basic of services. Poverty weighs heavily on the city. Nearly 25% of Jackson's residents live below the poverty line, among the highest rates of any U.S. capital. For children, the picture is even worse, with limited access to quality education and few economic opportunities. Schools reflect the broader collapse, struggling with underfunding, low test scores, and declining enrollment. Crime compounds the pressure. Jackson's violent crime rate is among the highest in the nation for a city of its size. Families weigh the risks every day, whether their neighborhoods are safe, whether their children can play outside, whether the city offers them any hope for a better future. The economic foundation of Jackson has eroded. Businesses leave, investments stall, and the tax base shrinks. Each departure deepens the city's inability to fund the very improvements it desperately needs. Moving vans head toward Memphis, Dallas, or Atlanta as residents trade Jackson's instability for opportunity elsewhere. Even its status as a state capital has not insulated Jackson from decline. Instead, it has made the dysfunction more visible. Political battles over control of the city's water system highlight the deep mistrust between local and state leaders, leaving residents caught in the middle. From a distance, Jackson still looks like a southern city with promise, tree-lined neighborhoods, historic churches, and the dome of its Capitol building. But for those living here, beauty cannot mask decay. The water may run today, but tomorrow is never guaranteed. In 2025, survival in Jackson often means leaving behind not just a city, but the hope that it will ever recover. For thousands of families, the choice is painful but clear. Stay and endure collapse, or leave in search of something better. Across San Francisco, Chicago, New Orleans, Cleveland, Birmingham, Oakland, Baltimore, St. Louis, Portland. And Jackson, the pattern is undeniable. Crime, poverty, corruption, failing schools, broken infrastructure, unaffordable housing, and vanishing hope, all driving families to flee the places they once called home. This is more than the story of 10 cities. It is the story of a nation at a crossroads. Communities that once powered America are collapsing, one neighborhood at a time. And the question that lingers isn't just which city is next, it's whether the country itself can hold together when its foundations are crumbling. If you've watched this far, you see what others don't. The truth behind the headlines, the collapse unfolding before our eyes. Subscribe now and stay with us as we uncover the next chapter of America's unraveling, because this story is far from over.